Can you imagine a time where Americans carry certificates of immunity?
You know, that's possible. I mean, it's one of those things that we talk about when we want to make sure that we know who the vulnerable people are and not. This is something that's being discussed. I think it might actually have some merit under certain circumstances.
We're hearing a lot about the need to come together and to accept that right now in this extreme situation, there are going to be there are enormous changes to our lives, but also there'll be some areas that we just have to go with what the consensus is, that usually we would have rights, we'd have protections, but no, now that's all changing. And one part of this, one area of this is with privacy and the talk of surveillance, which is the word you're hearing a lot now for cases of this virus. Now, when you're saying when surveillance is something like, for example, testing and having real time data returned to government authorities so they can see, there's been an outbreak in this city. We need to make sure we get the resources there, put public health personnel on alert and get the word out because of our instantaneous communications, because of social media. We can very easily let people know if there has been, let's say, a resurgence of COVID-19 in their area. Okay, fine. Good. But when we talk about things like tracking with GPS, whether people are sheltering at home, tracking where active cases are of this and making sure that people are quarantining properly. Again, I can understand, okay, you're supposed to quarantine. They want to make sure you stay in your home. But this, in any other era in my lifetime, there would be a lot of concern over government overreach and what this means for the future. And civil liberties are not something that you just cast aside and say, hey, maybe one day we'll revisit this, but things are really tough right now. There's always supposed to be some advocacy, some reminder out there of why we have the checks and balances that we do, and why we have even sometimes at the cost of what would be a better outcome. There are things in place in our system that say we need to have individual liberty protections that are not to be violated just because of the needs of the state as determined by people either in elected office or federal agencies. And, you can see here's just one example of this within the system. The fruit of the poison tree doctrine. And, this has been around for decades now. And it's that if the police search your car illegally, this is the classic example. The police search your car illegally and they find a murder weapon in the trunk. If it's a truly illegal search, not a good faith search, that will not be admissible in court. Now we look at this and we say, well, hold on a second. I mean, if this guy's a murderer, don't we want to throw him in prison? Well, we have these protections in place for the individual, and we don't let the government violate them because there's also an important good there. There used to be institutions, the ACLU, as much as it's always been liberal, there used to be institutions that would make these cases. But now all of what had been the major civil liberty institutions out there are effectively left-wing, lawyer programs that are able to get tax-deductible donations and then advocate for, whatever George Soros would basically want them to, right? That's what's really happened. But I bring this up because we're seeing all these stories from across the country of government acting in ways that we all know is unacceptable. And sometimes they've been willing to go back and apologize for it. But then we also turn around and say, well, hold on a minute. It's unacceptable, but why do they keep doing it? If we're also clear on what reasonable activity for the government should be, even during a pandemic, why are they doing things that are absurd? I mean, flatly absurd. Here are some examples of this that come to mind. Right now, Michigan has determined that there will be a ban on travel between residences. So, and there are some, I'm trying to remember what the exceptions are. Here we go. Except for purposes such as caring for a relative, a pet, or visiting a nursing home or attending a funeral with no more than 10 people, you are not allowed to go from one residence to another. So, for example, I have my brothers here in New York City. They're sheltering in place, too. I'm allowed to walk outside. I would not be under the Michigan rules. Now, whether people will obey these or not is a whole other question. I would not be allowed to walk to one of my, brother's apartments here in New York and spend some time with my brother, understanding that, yeah, you're introducing another human being into your space, and there's the possibility that one of us could be asymptomatic. But it's a very, very limited circle, and we're being cautious. But I wouldn't be able to do that, right? I would not be able to do that, even with brother of mine who is in the lower age risk category for the very low age risk category for the disease, even lower than me. So we're supposed to think that's okay? Now the government can tell you can't go see a friend. You have to stay in your home, and they're going to fine you for that.